2.01 is out and people seem to be loving it for the most part. It is a really good update after all, but like every update, it has its problems. One I want to tackle today is what was done to Fernando. Nando players made some noise at the start, but it seems like their voices were overshadowed by some of the more pressing problems at the time. Khan's ult distance, Amani's imbalances, and Terminus's power siphon cooldown. But don't worry Nando players, I'm here to make some more noise and hopefully help you all get the Nando you love back. So in case you don't know what happened, Nando received several nerfs that completely flipped his character around. Scourge lost its base damage bonus and received more damage on the Fireball Piercing modifier to balance that out. However, it is still less overall damage than before. His card, Hot Pursuit, that gave him movement speed when landing his fireball, was reworked and it now gives fireball projectile speed. On top of that, Brand was of course also reworked, but no one can really complain about that one, since every inbuilt anti-cot was also removed. Now, why is this so bad to Nando players? Why does this make him feel entirely different? Well, Nando's main playstyle was being an aggressive tank. You've all heard the term flank Nando, I imagine. He was built to be aggressive, push into and pressure the enemy, and make space. A lot like Ashe, who is another aggressive tank. He's not really meant to sit on point and get capture time. At least in a 2-tank lineup, which is the meta. Now of course he can sit on the point and capture, but he isn't a full-on main tank because he doesn't sustain on the point as well or as long as the full-on main tanks like Inara, Terminus, and Barrack. They have the tools to sit on the point and survive for a long time, which is why higher tier players consider them to be the main tanks. When it comes to main tanking, Nando's only used as a pseudo main tank in a double aggressive tank lineup, like if you have a Nando and Ashe for example. Even then though, a double aggressive tank lineup is still played differently than a main tank off tank lineup. There's a lot more pushing and a lot more aggression from both tanks because you want to make use of their greater strengths. Nando's aggressive playstyle was empowered by Hot Pursuit because his range is very limited compared to other aggressive tanks. Hot Pursuit allowed him to hit that fireball and move in quickly to eliminate that distance weakness. Without that speed, he is greatly inferior to other aggressive tanks since they all have better range and mobility. The Scorch nerf didn't help this because he lost a lot of damage output, so even when he isn't limited by distance, he's still not outputting as much damage as before. Right now, Nando is arguably the worst tank, and that's because he can't be aggressive effectively compared to other off tanks, and he can't sit on the point and survive as effectively as the other main tanks. He has no real place in the game because everyone else can do his jobs a lot better than he can. I've seen a lot of Nando players attempting to salvage him with other builds and attempting to adapt, but the problem is these new Nando setups for one, feel nothing like Nando, and two, they aren't any fun or any good. Like one I've seen that's been going around is you put a lot of points into the card that gives you bonus speed after dashing, and then you put a lot of points into the card that lowers your dash cooldown when your barrier takes damage. So this way you can have more mobility and speed, but the way you get it feels so awkward and clunky and just all around unfun, and it's still an ineffective playstyle on top of that. I don't think I've heard any Nando players say that what they did to him was okay or a good idea, and that's because it simply wasn't. Nando didn't need any big nerfs like this. He wasn't even in the top 3 tanks. If Terminus wasn't buggy, then Nando wouldn't even be in the top 4. The removal of inbuilts also hurt Nando the most out of all the tanks already because he was the only one with anti-cot. Tanks losing CC reduction isn't a big deal to any tank in particular since they all lost it, so none of them moved viability wise off of that alone. Nando however was again the only one to lose an anti-cot card, so if they wanted to nerf him, that alone was a big enough nerf already. There was no need whatsoever to nerf Scourge and rework one of Nando's staple cards. That's just too much, it changes the character way too much. And guys, preventing or reverting stuff like this is a big reason why I want to be in the assembly. To me, there is no worse feeling in this game than having a character you love and connect with and that you play all of the time be basically turned into something else. To just have such a big part of why you love them taken away for no real reason other than just to do it. Like Nando players, how are you feeling right now about Nando? Does he feel anything like himself anymore? I'm not even much of a Nando player. I play him sometimes, but not a whole lot. But I've been there before where a character was messed with drastically and it felt awful. So I get it. Lex and Andro players, how did you guys feel when they upped your fire rate so much? How many of you wish you could just go back to that slower fire rate, higher damage, even if it was through a talent, just so you could at least have the option to have your character back? Torvald players too, look at how different your character has become and for what reason. He's a bubble bot now, that's it, he doesn't really do anything else. I know he wasn't in the best spot at the time, neither was Lex and Andro, but was there any real reason to mess with them so much? To take core aspects of them and take them away before trying anything else? If I get on the assembly, I would do my best to keep stuff like this from happening. If a character doesn't absolutely need a big change, I'd want to find other, smaller ways to make them better, while still making sure they stay those characters that you guys love. I never want players to have to feel like they got their character taken away from them because again, that really hurts. So Nando players, I may not be on the assembly right now, so I can't push for this as hard as I'd like to. Maybe in the future I will be and I can, but for right now I'm trying my best to let your voices be heard and push to get your character back. And trust me guys, I get it. I do see the other argument where the aggressive Scourge playstyle was the only viable one. But I really don't think that nerfing or getting rid of a viable playstyle in an attempt to make others viable is a good balance method. I really don't. I think that buffing up the weaker playstyles in an attempt to make them viable is a better method. And I also at times find balance is often really unfair because think about it. Nando, who again wasn't even in the top 3 tanks, was nerfed heavily. But Makoa, who has arguably been the best tank in the game for like ever, wasn't nerfed at all. But Khan, who just like Koa was banned or first picked almost every game, was also nerfed quite a bit. And it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I think it'd be a lot better to bring down both of the must pick or must ban tanks so they aren't banned almost every game, and not nerf one of the tanks who has been fine balance wise for quite a while. Many of you probably can agree with this. I feel like there's been this big disconnect between us and Evil Mojo for a while now. The assembly is their attempt to bridge that. Albeit it's far from a smooth attempt, but it's still an attempt that I want to try and make the most of by becoming that bridge. So here's what I propose for Nando. It's real simple, probably wouldn't even take a lot of dev time either. Revert Hot Pursuit and revert the Scorch nerfs. That way Nando can still feel like himself to players and he could still be in a solid spot. And if you want to go the extra mile, work towards improving his other playstyles and talents so he can have more options. Now that's my 2 cents on this. Nando players, if you agree with me, let's start making some noise again. Let's make our voices heard and let's get the old Nando back. Remember,
together we are strong!
And that's pretty much it guys. I want to thank you all for watching. I very much appreciate it and I'm going to see you guys laters. Bye!